welcome to your one stop for vehicle repair, restoration, and everything automotive. This is Burds Garage. So today in Burds Garage, we're going to jump back on our 65 Mustang project car, which we dubbed Operation Fastback. Now in a previous episode of Burds Garage, you saw me salvage this trunk and floor section out of a 67 coupe. We put a new trunk drop off and floor section in it, and then we prepped it and primed it, and we cleaned it all up so we can install it into our car. So we're going to get work on cutting our rusty old sheet metal out of our car, and we're going to install this entire section, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to replace the quarter panels, the sail panel, the tail panel, the deck filler panel, these B-pillars, everything basically from this B-pillar, or what's called a door jamb that you see in the car, everything from this back is going to get replaced. This will make sure the job is done once, done right. We never have to worry about anything rusting ever again. There's a lot of prep work though that goes in. You just can't start cutting the car apart. There's some inner structure and other things you don't want to cut into. You want to remove these full panels safely and accurately, take them off, and then prep the car and be able to weld these back on. So I've done a lot of that prep work already. Right now I'm going to walk you around the car. I'm going to show you some of the things I've done so far in order to get to this point. So the first and most important things I've done is I welded these cross braces into the car. This will keep the car from twisting and hopefully keep its geometrical shape that it is right now before we start cutting everything apart. I also went ahead, I kind of figured out where I need to make my cuts because the trunk section does have a little bit piece of these inner rockers, and I want to basically mirror that together because the edge of these are pretty rusty. The ones in our car are solid. I'm going to mirror them together with the whole trunk and floor section and then put all the new sheet metal onto where it needs to go on the rest of the car. So from there I disconnected any kind of sheet metal or brackets or anything that's going to stay with our inner frame, like over in here. I disconnected all that so we dropped this trunk floor section out. This is going to stay up in our frame and the bottom's just going to fall out. Then we went ahead and we removed any kind of brackets we have to change over to our new trunk floor. Remember, we were going from a coupe floor to a fastback, so there's panels like this, different kind of seat brackets and stuff that we have to change over. So when they were removed, they were cleaned up down to bare metal, and what we ended up doing is then just spraying them with a weld-through primer so we can put them onto the car, weld on them, we won't have any rust issues between the two metal surfaces, and then we go ahead and just paint it later when we're done. I've drilled the spot welds out where the sail panel meets there and the quarter panel that has to come off. I also went ahead and I dug all the caulk out of my quarter panel seams where they meet this vent area. So finally then I welded this cross brace into the car. Eventually I'm going to cut the floors out, so I really don't care about the floors or the welds. And I'm going to put jack stands under this bar, and this is going to hold the rest of our car while we take the whole rear end out. My intent is to cut the floor away from the rest of the car, and we're just going to roll out everything with the rear end and the springs attached, using these dollies that are already under the rear tires. So right now we're going to start working on cutting off our quarter panels from our inner skeleton structure, and we're going to start by getting the lead out. So why did I just reference one of my favorite songs off the Aerosmith Rocks album? Is because there is lead in this car and we have to get it out in order to expose our seams for our two body panels to help separate and remove them. So back in the day, any kind of two panels that met together from the factory, they always used lead. So we have to go ahead, melt that lead out again so we can expose the panels and we can remove them safely. Now the best way to do that is use a propane tank. The lead has a very soft melting point, and then we can just go ahead and melt it out and then we'll know what we're working with. So you can see along here and along this area, when referencing our replacement panel for our sail area, you can actually see where our seams are, and we're going to go ahead then, that's where the lead is going to be. Now I'm not going to worry about the one here over at the deck filler panel because we're going to cut this whole area out. Don't really have to remove the lead. It's a lot of it's a lot of extra work we don't need to do, but we definitely have to remove the lead right in that area, which we're going to take care of right now. So I cleaned this up with a DA sander so you could see a little better. You can actually see two different types of material. You could see the transition line here, and then the other one is somehow right up out in this area here. And you can see then what a nice filler that is from the factory, and that's why that they use that to anywhere the two panels meet, they would use lead to fill in the gaps, smooth it over, work it out nice, and then they would finish on with doing the rest of the bodywork and the paint on the car. Not good for our case because we need to remove all this, we need to get to our seams. So we're going to go ahead and melt this out with the propane torch and get rid of this. So doing this, you always want to think of safety in mind, safety glasses, something on your hands, because that lead is hot, it can come back out at you. And also then I'm gonna wear a respirator. Hiding our sail to roof panel seam, and you can see a lot better what we're working with what we got to do. So this is our roof here, and these are spot welds. Actually, it's like a double set of spot welds. I don't know what the person at the factory was thinking of that day, because on the other side they don't have these like double welds up at the top. But we shouldn't have to worry about those. What we got to do is find our spot welds on this area, because this is where our sail panel tucks under our roof. So once we drill those out, we can pull the roof skin up and kind of just snake this panel out. But I don't want to do that yet. I want to do something else first. So what I want to do before that is I want to trim away this quarter panel from this inner structure here. Now there's a couple ways we can approach this. We can drill out all the spot welds, which is, and I think in my opinion in this case, it's going to be a lot more time consuming, and it's also really hard to get the spot weld cutter into this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to carefully trim this back with a die grinder, kind of just bend the metal in, and then I'm going to make some slits into these sheet metal panels that are attached to our inner structure, and I'm kind of just going to break those away and fold them up and just get them out of the way. Especially with this metal back here is really rusty, I think it's going to be really easy to just do a little bending and those spot welds will just prop right out. So right now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go grab my cutoff wheel, and I'm going to start making these cuts, and we're going to get this area out. Then we can attack that sail panel area, and then we'll see what else we're going to do to start prepping to get these quarters off the car. Now here you can see the comparison between our old and new sheet metal. So that is the area that we're going to target where we have to remove it from that inner structure. This is also why it's a really good idea to have all your replacement panels before you start cutting up your car, just to make sure you don't cut into anything that you don't need or want to. Specific reason why I cut this piece like this. You know, I'm going to just shear it off. I'll go over that later why I did this. I'm just going to bend it up and kind of move it back and forth so the metal just breaks free from the... That's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to go ahead and put slices into these edges. I'm going to try to do it with, if I can find the spot weld, I'll do that. If you split the spot weld like in 2 or 3 spots, it'll make this come off much easier. And if not, this, like I said earlier, this metal is really rusty. It's probably just going to pop off the spot weld anyways. Not so much in here, because this is definitely a lot more solid than this area, but we'll just keep working at it till we get all this off, and we'll go to the next part. I got the old metal removed. I still got to do a little more cleanup here with some of the spot welds were with the grinder. That's no big deal. Right now I'm going to go ahead then and do the same thing all around our vent area and get all that removed, and then we can go to the next step. trimmed way back a lot more because I want to do a little preliminary fitting of how our sail panel is going to fit. So I went ahead and I cut way out what I needed, and I also went ahead and cut this piece that goes into our drip rail. Made a few minor mistakes here where I went a little bit too deep with the cutter, but that's okay. I'm going to weld those up, grind them down flush, and we'll be good to go. Now our next step in is we have to go ahead, remove this little bit of sheet metal that's still here along the roof. What we're going to do is drill the spot welds out. We're going to slip this piece out, and then we should be able to get our sail panel in there. And then we're going to go ahead and start working on more of the sheet metal that we got to remove. So like when I've shown in previous episodes of Burds Garage, you worked on the floor. We're going to find the spot welds, and we're going to mark them with a center punch, like that. And then we're going to use our spot weld cutter and cut all the welds out, and then again pull this piece out from the sail panel we don't need. If you can't find them too well, you can also go ahead and take a paint pen or a marker, try to find them, because you lose sight of them, it's hard to actually see them here. So I put a little mark there, find the weld, and then you know where to start drilling. Just got to slowly work it like this. Remember, the piece we're trying to get off, we're probably got to actually drill a little farther into those welds. But I know it looks mangled up now, but once we get this done, we get the new panel under here, we can pound this all down flush and then weld it all back into place. So with this new panel loosely fitted, you get a good idea now what we're doing, and it gives you some encouragement to continue with the rest of the job, because so far it's been a lot of work. But we got a lot more to go, and we're going to have a lot more to do here coming up. So I got a whole other side to do now, so I'm going to work on that, and then I'm going to work on getting rid of the next panel we have to take off the car. Okay, a few hours later, I got the rest of this side done, and it looks pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and remove this deck filler panel. So I'm just going to go ahead and follow the same process that I used to get the sheet metal removed around our sail panel here and get our quarter panel off. I'm just going to take the plasma cutter and I'm going to cut right on this edge on both sides to get this deck filler panel out, and then I'm going to make slits into this upper panel here where the rest of the material is, and I'm going to cut it in a bunch of different times, and then I can move it, and you'll see that inner structure here in our inner panel where our decklet goes on top. Alright, I got about 2/3 of this deck panel cut out. Let's take it out and see what it looks like. Well, not bad. At least this isn't rotted. So now you see more of that inner structure I'm talking about and how careful it is you don't want to cut into it or damage it, because this is where we'll weld our new panels to. But right now we're just going to continue cutting away the rest of our deck filler panel. Pretty much the car is going to stay here, so I'll get to a point where I can almost cut the back half off. Not close, but we're getting there. So I'm removing the last pieces of the deck filler panel, and here I think it's easier. What I'm doing is I'm just blowing a hole with the plasma cutter in the center of the weld and then drilling it completely out. Now here I'm actually going to weld the new deck filler panel on the underside, so making a hole here is no problem. And it'll be a much cleaner install and less grinding. So here I'm just cutting out the rest of the left quarter panel because I'm going to pull the rear end and truck floor to the right and it's going to be in the way, so I'm just going to get rid of it right now. And now you get a much better look on how rotted the car really is. Okay, as you can see here, I finally got all my deck filler panel out. I also went ahead and cut a lot of other sheet metal out that we don't need that's going to be in the way. So I also went ahead, I removed any kind of brackets or anything that's attached to our wheel wells or our trunk floor that's going to be in the way that we don't need, so we can just pull this trunk section out the way we need it. And I also put this extra brace in because this upper frame section loose, it's got a little bit of movement to it. So I just want to put that in there, keep it in place, so hopefully we don't lose any positioning that we have from the factory. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make my floor cuts right here with the two pieces of sheet metal meet here and also on the frame rail. And I'm going to come back down, go over here, get into my inner rocker here, make a slice through here on the outside, then this whole entire section then hopefully is just going to come right out, and then we can work on prepping stuff to put it back in. So for most of this job I'm going to use the plasma cutter, but you can use a cutoff wheel just fine. A little bit easier in this case. So you can see I got all that cutting out of the way, it looks really good. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my cutoff grinder and I'm going to make the final cuts then into the inner rockers and the outer rockers because I just want a nice cleaner cut than what that plasma cutter is going to do. And then that should be the only thing that's holding this section together that we want to get out of here. So I finally got all that done and it's definitely loose. You can see there's two sections now, and right here our sheet metal was shifted. So it's definitely broken away, but I'm still having some clearance issues with some of these brackets in here that are causing me some grief. So when I do that, I'm going to go ahead and air down the tires, and that should bring this section down and be able enough to clear all the stuff I'm trying to clear and bring it out. Retrospect, we probably should have actually had the car this way instead, and I could have brought that back in and out, but it's too late now. We'll have to work with what we have. I definitely do not want to move the car when it's in current position with the jack stands and everything. I just don't want to take a chance in losing its geometrical shape that it was from the factory. So here you can see it's finally out of there. A lot of work, a lot more work than I thought it would be. But it's always more work than what you plan on. Then here's what we're left structurally. Now you get a really better understanding of this inner skeleton and what I was talking about a couple times before, and how we have to make sure we keep this intact and we don't cut in or damage it. Go ahead, I'm going to clean all this rust where I can clean it up, and especially where my new sheet metal mating surfaces are going to be. Where I don't have that, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to treat the rust, and then I'm going to go ahead and seal it with some chemicals and a primer and a paint. As you can imagine, that's going to take quite a considerable length of time, so I'll catch up with you later when I get all that done, and we're going to see how we're going to approach this project to put all these panels in that new trunk floor section back together, which we'll cover in the next show, and also reveal why it was so important to move this section in one piece. So as always, thanks for watching, good luck with your projects, and remember, it's not a rewarding day unless you get dirty.